Hello kids, and today I'll be quickly making a US Marine from World War II. And yes, this is the first video in the sculpting and 3D printing series. Isn't that great? Anyways, if you're wondering why I chose to make a Marine this time, it's because I wanted to start off safe and simple. This is the first time I'm doing something like this after all, so let's start off easy. And with that, I first start gathering reference images. Because I don't know how a US Marine looks like, and I also don't know how to shoot a gun, so I don't know what pose you're supposed to be in. And after looking through a lot of Google images, I found one that I liked. And yeah, this is the generic shooting pose that most army men already have, and it's kinda boring. But at least he has a Thompson, and you don't see that in army men, do you? I also get this image with a 360 view of a uniform for a Marine soldier so I could accurately depict all sides of the soldier. And with that, it's time to start sculpting the soldier with some circles, some calculations, some stretching, some pulling, some skill, just kidding. So I'm gonna go with the ghetto way to sculpt a soldier, and that's with this setup I have right here. Right now I'm in Tinkercad, and if you see my old video on 3D printing soldiers, there I just piece together soldiers with different limbs that I get off a 3D model. And this was pretty lousy because it gave me the shape of a soldier, but not the detail because the model was terrible. But the good thing about that method is that it makes the general shape of a soldier. Then I could just add details on it later. And it's much easier than starting from scratch. And here you can start to see why I said we could quickly sculpt this soldier. If you want more details on what I'm doing right now, you can watch my old video on 3D printing soldiers, which gives the gist of this method. Anyways, I start piecing together the pose of the soldier with the old limbs I had stored in this file. Of course, some people may call this cheating, but I say it's strategy. There is one skill that is involved, and that's anatomy, so knowing how long an arm or leg or head is supposed to be is very important here. I also use this model of a Thompson gun from Thingiverse. But since the gun will be printed at a small size, I had to make some alterations to the model to make sure that the thinnest details will actually print. Right now I'm trying to match the pose to be as dynamic as the one from the image. Finally, with all that work, I export the soldier and the gun separately so I can edit them independently in Blender. And as a reminder, Blender is a free 3D modeling software that you can use right now. And that's where I do most of my work in. Once imported, I go to sculpt mode and start smoothing out the soldier. The bumps that are supposed to be bags and stuff on the original model isn't needed here. I also use this nudge tool that allows me to stretch certain parts of the model to fix anatomy issues. Right now, I just try to get the basic shape of the soldier down. Adding details right now is unnecessary and impossible because the mesh quality is so bad. Now I might sound like a pro at using Blender, but this really is the 4th time I'm using this program. Maybe because modeling soldiers and making cardboard tanks is kinda similar in the process. But I'm not a pro, and I do look up tutorials midway through the video because I believe learning things has to be done while doing it. Next, the gun is imported and some time is spent making the soldier look like he's actually holding it. Here I have the base mesh of the soldier, and now it's time to start adding details like the facial expressions, the folds in the clothes, and the pouches he has. I import the references here so I can have an accurate depiction of the details, and using the draw brush I draw folds into the mesh. As of right now, I'm using a mouse to sculpt my models. On many videos they say getting a drawing tablet is better so you have more control over your mesh. I might get a drawing tablet sooner or later, but for now I'll stick with the mouse. Looking back at this, the folds on the clothes actually look really ugly for some reason. I think this may be because I'm using a mouse so the folds don't taper off and they look really globby, I guess. I do fix some of these by making them taper off manually. Folds are just something I'll have to get more practice on. After that, I try sculpting the face, but I realized I was shit at sculpting faces. Clothing is one thing, but faces are very recognizable by humans and I don't have much practice on it. On the head, I realized that the original helmet was pretty ugly looking, so I just got one off the internet and just pasted it onto the soldier. The perks of digital sculpting. Of course, it's not that easy. I had to remove some smaller details that wouldn't print right, such as the straps on the helmet, and I had to fill in the helmet so there wouldn't be hollow space. Now that I was satisfied with the basic body of the soldier, I add on some extra details such as pouches and grenades. These are also taken off the internet. I add a water canteen or grenade on his waist, some pouches around, it all looks pretty dandy. I also add my signature stand to the soldiers to show where it came from. After a few little more tweaks, the model was pretty much done. It didn't take 3 months, but it did take around 5 hours. I'm starting to like this digital area. As always, this model will be linked in the description below for free use. You can download it and print it if you have a 3D printer. Which is the next thing. I import it into my slicer, Kira, which will export it into the 3D printing format for the 3D printer. And here I just have to basically set up how to print the model. Now, printing figurines is not that easy, especially when your figure has a long horizontal object sticking out of it. As you can see, adding supports that have to travel all the way up to the gun is pretty inefficient. So instead, I decided to try a method where you print the soldier at an angle. This in theory would decrease the amount of overhang in the soldier. But printing something that is straight, like the base, on an angle is a pretty bad idea, and it failed. Not giving up, I divide the base and the body and print it in the same way. This also didn't work because the leg exploded, and printing a long gun on an angle at a small scale doesn't actually work too well. So I decided to just print the soldier on its side so the gun would be completely straight and vertical. Printing on its side had its downfalls as well, because printing on its side means you have to attach a lot of supports onto the side, and the supports pretty much ruined the backside of the soldier. Finally, I decided to just go with the straight-on approach of just printing the soldier in 2 halves. One part with approximately the stand and the legs, and one with the top body so that supports could easily reach the gun without having to travel the length of the legs. This worked out pretty well. The print time was shorter because there was less support, and the print could print on a flat surface, such as the cut in half body of the soldier. But this also meant that I had only 2 halves of the soldier, so I had to glue them back together in the end. But this method worked out the best and was the cleanest. Here you can see how each print slowly got better and better until I reached my goal. And this is usually what happens when you're 3D printing soldiers or something like this. Usually the first time isn't going to be the best time. Satisfied with my results, I clean up the model and start painting it. I just use acrylic paints for this, and to make it look like plastic, I add a layer of gloss. And now you're finally done. Aw, god damn it! So now it's finally done, and I do have to say it does look pretty good. There are some printing artifacts, and I don't have a macro lens so I can't record it properly, but it does look like a toy soldier. The 3D printer captured a lot of the detail, even more than a conventional toy soldier has. And since I printed at such a low layer height, you can barely tell that it's been 3D printed. All in all, I'm pretty impressed by the results of this, and it's already much better than the other soldier I sculpted about 2 weeks ago. As always, thank you for watching, and now it's time to add another soldier to the collection.